Joining us now is Professor Jeffrey Sachs at Columbia University, an expert and somebody we wanted to speak with for quite a long time. So, sir, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Great to be with you. Thank you.
Absolutely. I mean, first, let's just start off with the insanity of the last 24 hours. I know you've been monitoring, quote, the situation, as all of us have. And we just want to get your reaction to the broader ramifications of this ceasefire, at least for now, between Israel and Iran, and the role here of the United States.
Well, this has been an absolutely wild week. In a way, it is Bibi's fulfillment of a 30-year mission to try to drag the United States into a war with Iran. This latest episode has been part of a long-term idea of Netanyahu, which is we're going to do what we want in Gaza, the West Bank. We're going to control everything. We'll kill, we'll have a genocide, and anyone that objects, any other country in the region, well, we'll overthrow that government. That's been the basic strategy for 30 years. For 30 years, the United States has gone along with that strategy, whether it is in Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Sudan, Libya, and Iran was always the big prize. So Netanyahu's been absolutely itching for a big war with Iran, trying to drag the U.S. in. And what we saw last week probably was the great battle inside between the deep state, which is absolutely in line with Mossad. It's basically a Mossad CIA operation for 30 years. And MAGA, which says, stop, we're sick of this. We're sick of these wars. The president, I don't know where he is because I haven't checked my my social media for the last 30 seconds, but he's been on both sides of this. But his base has been saying, do not do this, do not do this. Whereas Netanyahu has been saying next year in Tehran, or his ministers have been putting that out in disgusting vulgarity. So I don't know whether this is going to stop, but this is a battle of a long-term strategy of Netanyahu, remake the Middle East to give basically complete total impunity to Israel to do every murder, massacre, genocide that it wants to do. And some of us who think that's not making the world a better place.
Yeah.
That's not helping anything, and it's not making America more secure. Thanks God, if this ceasefire holds, that's a good thing. That's the bottom line.
Yeah. Professor, let's pull on that thread a little bit more of the Israelis. As you mentioned, this has been a multi-decade project of Netanyahu specifically, but it's broadly supported with the Israeli public and certainly with his entire coalition, including literal terrorists that are involved in his government. So he's not going to give up and just say, okay, ceasefire, and now we have peace with Iran. That is certainly not going to happen. So what do you expect to see based on previous historical actions from the Israelis? What do you expect the Israelis to do next to try to play their next card to get us drawn in yet again?
Well, the Israelis will make new provocations. That's for sure. They will make arguments that now we see the perfidy of Iran, or for whatever argument to keep drawing us in. I have said for years, I think decades now, that the main job of the president of the United States in modern times is to keep the foot on the brake of the war machine, because it's always revving. If you went to the deep state in the last few days, I think bombing missions against Iran are just splendid. Let's try out those B-2s. Let's see how the bunker busters do. And going beyond that, the regime change, well, that was in half the tweets of the last, or social truth posts of the last few days. So I think that Israel will provoke, and it is the job of the United States, when in rare moments presidents do their job, to keep the foot on the brake. And this morning, Trump unusually chastised Israel in a post saying, do not drop that bomb. Well, actually, that's his job. It's pretty interesting. He did it this time. Yesterday was different. We'll see what happens tomorrow.
So one of the things I'm curious about, sir, you're obviously always looked at the bigger picture, and there was a lot made potentially of Russia and China coming in on Iran's side. That didn't materialize to a major extent, but there were at least some entanglements. We can put this one up on the screen. For example, former President Medvedev of Russia at one point basically threatened, basically said the Americans have accomplished nothing in their strikes. Potentially, we could transfer nukes to them. He walked it back a little bit later, saying a number of countries are ready to directly supply Iran with their own nuclear warheads, but then he walked it back later. What do you make, though, of how the Russians and the Chinese will respond to what's transpired in the last 12 days?
Yeah, I think, by the way, what Medvedev was saying in that point number 3 was not Russia transferring nuclear arms or endorsing that, but the fact that Pakistan is a country closely aligned with the Islamic cause, obviously, and with Iran, and absolutely able to transfer nuclear weapons. North Korea is another case. And I think that's an important point, by the way, because we've been told that the be-all and end-all is Iran's enrichment of uranium. That is not the true issue at stake here. The true issue at stake is Israel vulnerable by its own actions to a nuclear attack on Israel? The answer is yes. Does Israel create more security for itself the way that it operates? My answer is no. It makes Israel more and more dangerous. Not only did we see, obviously, that the Iron Dome ain't so iron, and that there were it was not hard to penetrate the air defenses in Israel. But Israel seems to think that Iran is the end of the story, and it is not the end of the story. There are 57 countries in the Organization of Islamic Cooperation that are absolutely dead set against what Israel is doing. The vast majority of the world is dead set against it. When you ask about Russia and China, it is their fundamental purpose not to be thrown under the bus of the United States. This is the basic point. They want a multipolar world, not a U.S.-dominated world. And they are succeeding in that because the U.S. does not have the means, the power, in my view, the interest, but put that aside, the means or the power to make a U.S.-dominated world, despite what Washington has believed for more than 30 years. So Russia and China are careful. China's very precise. I think it's a cliche, but it's also true that Russia plays chess, China plays Go, and the United States plays poker. One hand at a time, very quick, not any long-term strategy, just go for the hand.
I like that.
I think that China and Russia bided their time in the first days. But the point was, really, Iran was not decapitated and with regime change, nor was it stopped in its ability to do great damage inside Israel up until the very last moment, which really irks the Israelis that it was the last exchange of missiles in this case was Iran's. And then Israel tried to violate the timeline and launch another one so it could be last. And that's when Trump said, no, stop. We already have an understanding about the chronology. So we are watching step by step the emerging of a true multipolar world where other powers that don't love the United States, they don't hate it, by the way, they just don't want to be subservient to it. They have nuclear arms, powerful weapons, the technologies that we have so that we can't dominate. And Iran is a regional power. It's not a pushover for Israel by any means. There was no one strike and it's all over. One of the things that may have happened last week, I don't know, of course, but Netanyahu, telling Trump, we can do it, we can do it, we can do it. And they did their decapitation murders. Mossad really is a murder machine, of course, and it did its decapitation strike, and it did not bring down the regime. And so it probably led Trump and people around him to say, come on, the Israelis have given us a bunch of BS. on this. It didn't change the regime. It didn't end the threats. And I think that's when Trump heard his base calling. He heard common sense calling. And he said, look, this isn't going according to plan. And I think the main point is with Russia and China, they were cautious, but they weren't letting Iran fall by any means. And if Iran were to be facing a more cataclysmic set of events in the last few days, I think the reactions also would have been different.
Interesting.
To your point about perhaps the Israelis were selling, and perhaps they even believed that they would be able to, create a regime collapse in short time. The Washington Post got a hold of this leaked audio of Mossad agents calling Israeli generals and saying, you have 12 hours or else we're going to murder you and your wife and kids, by the way. And if you want to avoid that fate, you need to record yourself surrendering. You need to film this surrender video and send it to us, which of course would have been used as propaganda by the Israelis. And as best we know, not one of them did that, which I think, in and of itself is an indication that they may have miscalculated the strength of this regime, especially once a country is bombed, like it's very common for people to rally around the flag. But I wanted to ask you, with regards to Israel, so they have bombed, they're committing a genocide in Palestine, in the Gaza Strip. They bombed Lebanon, Syria, Yemen, Iran, Iraq, and are a nuclear-armed nation outside of the NPT. Did have a secret nuclear weapons program, and are a rogue nation, I think, by any characterization at this point. Is there going to be any consequence for them? Like, is there any sort of longer term consequence for the fact that they have behaved in this outrageous, barbaric fashion over years at this point, and really made themselves a villain in terms of the eyes of much of the world?
I think Israel is in its worst insecurity in its history by far, because it is utterly isolated in the international system. I'm sitting just outside the UN. I've been attending UN Security Council meetings, UN General Assembly sessions. You have 95% of the world population voting against Israel right now. You have an overwhelming call for the absolutely practical state of Palestine being established on the borders of the 4th of June, 1967, and Israel learning finally, after decades and decades, it's just going to have to live alongside the Palestinian people who have the same number population as the Israeli Jews. And this is the most basic point of all. Israel has no security from all of this. It has achieved nothing except a wasteland in its neighborhood. And if it wants security, the only security is to rejoin the family of nations. And the way to do that is straightforward. It's according to international law. It's according to basic common sense. It's according to decency. It's according to endless resolutions of the UN Security Council and the UN General Assembly. And that is that there would be a state of Palestine for the Palestinian people alongside a state of Israel. And President Trump actually can make that happen. If he wants his Nobel Peace Prize, it's not by this ceasefire after this behavior of the last week. It is by a Palestinian state being established. How does that happen? One vote change in the UN Security Council. The U.S. vetoed this last year when it came to a vote in the Security Council, which is the part of the UN system or the international system that establishes the statehood membership in the UN. All the United States has to do is to say, we go along with all the rest of the world and tell Israel, wake up, we're saving you. We're not hurting you. We are saving you from yourself, however. It's just crazy what Israel's doing. And the idea that this is any security, I think they should understand that with apartment buildings in Beersheba being destroyed, with Haifa being attacked, with Tel Aviv being attacked, with the countries outside of the region like Pakistan and DPRK watching, if Israel thinks it has any security at all from its brazenness, it should think again. And by the way, what we saw in the Mossad tape, which is chilling, of course, to listen to,
Yeah.
Is that Mossad became a killing machine. It's very skillful at murder, I would say. Not mass murder in the sense that the murder of the leadership of the Iranian military last week. Yes, that's Mossad's business. But to have that as your centerpiece of statehood, to be Murder Incorporated, is not going to get you safety or security or any sound sleep any day in your life. Israel needs to rethink fundamentally this Bibi strategy, which goes back to 1996 when he first became prime minister.
And I think to your point, they're not going to rethink it because the public is broadly supportive of the Bibi strategy. It has to be forced upon them, and the United States of America can do that if there is any will to do it.
Yeah.
It depends always. It has always depended on the United States going along. By the way, people should get online if they haven't done it recently and look at Netanyahu's speech to the U.S. Congress in 2002, telling them how wonderful the Iraq war is going to be. Oh, it's a cakewalk. It's going to inspire the whole region. This man is nuts. He's a failure for 30 years. He's the biggest warmonger on the planet. If Trump wants a successful presidency, don't sign on to this idiocy. Do your job, Mr. President. Make peace in the region. That has to be, you give the state of Palestine alongside the state of Israel, stop the genocide, and go along with international law. It's pretty straightforward. It's there for the taking.
All right. Well, sir, we always appreciate your analysis, and it was great talking to you. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Professor.
Pleasure to be with you. Thank you.
Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.